This is the Unscripted podcast.
It's about time, ain't it?
About time for what?
That we got back on.
We did it last week. What are you talking about?
No, we didn't.
We did. I thought we did it last week.
No, we did it 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah. That's right. I'm sorry. I had to go to
You had
Marietta.
a hernia appointment or something. Or...
No, I had to go to Marietta, Georgia.
Huh?
No. No. We voted for them.
You did. Ben, have you been able to console Chris this whole time with this election? I know.
I've barely seen Chris.
Yeah, I could care less about it. To be honest with you, it didn't matter to me. You know, I was. You know, I'm glad we talked about what we. Yeah, I'm glad we talked about what we did last week because I just really I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just you just get more. I don't know. The older you get, I don't know if it's you just get more. You realize how important it is to work in God's vineyard and not. You know that those things just seem so inconsequential to me now. It's just like watching two people fight over who's going to use the fine china in its paper plates. You know, I mean,
I know. There was I got a thing sent to me yesterday, late last night. Said, hey, can you sign this petition? And it's based off of all these. They're wanting to pass legislation because the Methodist Church has been coming back and dropping the bomb on all these little local churches, you know, because with their wokes, you know, things and whatever, putting homosexuals and anyways, all this stuff in the pulpit and proving of all these things. Well, anyways, all these little churches are backing away from that. Well, they're losing the deeds to their properties. Mm-hmm. They didn't realize, you know, the farmers and stuff built those church buildings and donated the property and stuff. Well, then when they signed over to be part of the United Methodist whatever, well, then they signed over the deed of their property too. So, anyways, they're trying to pass legislation now, and it was
in Tennessee.
In Tennessee, and they just said the Tennessee Supreme Court said that they would listen to cases in the past, but as long as it didn't have to do with doctrinal issues, you know, with the church.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, they're just
well, that should be the way it should be, anyways.
Absolutely, and but I texted the guy who sent it to me he's an attorney and I've known him a long time, played baseball with him. But I said, man, this is the reason why the church needs to be autonomous. And and anyways, but just the whole, you know, the government trying to, you know, decide things with the church. People are having to appeal to the government. I mean, the church is messed up. But there's
a guy that one of the guys, install guys for some of the equipment that we got here in the shop. He's from like south east of Selma, Alabama, and he's in some he explained it to me, and
it was where that is. You know where Selma, Alabama is, and guys, it's the southeast side of Selma.
It's over towards like between Montgomery and Selma, I reckon is what you'd say.
Now if you know where Montgomery is.
And anyways, he's from, and I just don't, you know, this is the hard part about, you know, this is why there's 40-some thousand different churches out there, because when you hear Methodist Church, you know, you just kind of hear this like, you know, rainbow flag scenario in your mind. And and this guy was like, we're from a very conservative Methodist church. And I was like, you know, in my mind, I'm trying to picture what that would look like, you know, and and the crazy thing is like, they're like the long dress, you know, long hair, no makeup. I mean, all, you know, for the women, and, you know, I mean, just almost look like Mennonites. Right. Yeah, and you're just like,
we're a Mennonite Methodist.
Yeah. I mean, and he explained it to me, and I'm just sitting there trying to, in my mind, make sense of all this. But anyways, they're going through the same thing that, in Alabama, I reckon it is, they gave them, and I don't know how these denominations have their like little territories divided up, if it's statewide or what, I don't know how it works. But anyways, their little council or whatever gave them X amount of time to take the name off the building. If not, they were going to take their property. So that's kind of.
There's one down here that took duct tape and put over the little symbol, because the symbol's like trademarked. Or whatever.
Oh, the little like cross with the flame thing on it, or whatever that is. Is that what it is? Is that the one with the cross and the flame? Is the Methodist Church? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is. And then, so they put duct tape over that part, and then marked out United or something, and it's Deckard Methodist. Like, we're not united anymore.
Right. We're the Duct Tape Methodist Church.
Yeah. So, which, I mean, that's a lot better than what, it has been. There's a lot of great people in the Methodist Church, but here's what's happened.
Man.
It's the wool has been pulled down over their eyes, and they've been listening to some counsel and we've had a chairperson for all this time, and there's a lot of people that have waked up and they're starting to actually read their Bibles and go, this ain't lining up.
Yeah. And that's the power of it, is that, you appreciate to some degree when people almost, you think like, I'm so glad you guys are doing this stuff, because it makes us stand out different, so much more differently,
Yeah.
And in the sense,
go ahead.
In the sense that you don't just, sometimes, I'll even hear people try to say, well, they'll come in and like with their girlfriends or something like that. And I'll even hear them say things like, see, we're not that much different from you guys. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to soften the landing, right?
Yeah.
To some degree, but you realize like that's still comparing to you're still using a flawed standard in comparison there. You're comparing yourself to them instead of them comparing themselves to us.
Yeah. Hey, I want everybody who's on here to give Ben and Emily a congratulations. Ben's back with us, but he got married recently. So, yeah. Ben, what's it like being married?
It's very clean. The house is nice.
And Ben's got a cold.
Yeah.
Ben over here got a cold. So is she making you sleep by yourself or not?
No, I made it to the bed first last night. Got to my side and started snoozing. So, but it's great, man. Married
2 weeks in now? 2 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Oh,
yeah.
Ben, is there a threshold where Courtney makes you sleep in a different place?
Yeah. Sure. I sleep in my bed.
Jessica, she's not a germaphobe. Well, I wouldn't say she's like, who I'm talking about when I say one of our deacons, Bob. And she's not that bad by no stretch of the imagination, but there's a point in her head to where she so hates to get sick, right? She's not scared of the germs, but she just hates to be run down from being sick, that she'll go sleep in the guest place, and she's, she's done that probably 3 times.
Like fussing and fighting. Like,
no,
y'all probably don't do that,
We don't do it no more. We don't do it no more.
We fuss and fight like every day. So
we don't do it no more, and I also say we don't do it no less. And so but the fact that I'm just saying, like, she'll go sleep in the guest place if like when the COVID foolishness. Remember when the COVID foolishness when like we Colby's doing a marriage class down here in the, I don't know which room. I'm teaching the adult class.
The fellowship hall.
Okay. So Colby's doing a marriage class down there, and our adult class has probably got 40, 50 people in it, and they're all there's a couple folks in there that are like our age, but the majority of them are going over to the marriage class.
Yeah,
and
Kobe's got like 40 or 50 in his class too.
Probably. Exactly. So Jessica, she told me, cause she was teaching the ladies class, and the ladies class, they asked Jessica like, hey, can we do this on Wednesday night so we can go to the marriage class? Because they're actually doing the marriage class for a unique reason. Well, of course, to strengthen the church, but they're doing it so that they could invite their friends from the denominations, because they're already used to coming to church on Sunday, right? So they're inviting their friends to come to the marriage class. Some of the people in the other churches like, hey, y'all come, we're going to do a marriage class here. So they didn't want to move the marriage class. They just asked Jessica if they can move the ladies class time. She said, well, sure. And the week or whatever it was that she was going to come to the she had 2 options. She can come to my class, right? I mean, and how many times has she heard me teach? Or she could go to the marriage and family class. And so she asked me, or marriage class, whatever they call it. And she said, when do you, what is the point that you stop going to the marriage class? And I was like, I don't know. She's like, probably when you're mad at the other one for getting sick. You've come so far in your marriage that you're mad that the other one is sick now, because there's when you're first married, I don't know if Emily's is she fixing you soup and stuff like that?
No. Well, she didn't this morning, but we'll find out when I make it back.
Okay, if you just crawl up into bed and she's like takes good care of you.
Yeah.
There's a point where she's going to get mad at you for getting sick. and it's because she's going to be mad that there's a chance she could get sick, or you could get the kid sick, right? And so Jessica said, I reckon when we get mad at each other for being sick, that's when we're time to. We've been married long enough then to where we don't need to go to the marriage class anymore. But she still went to the marriage class, but she still gets mad at me for being sick. So
not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Maybe we're in the transition period. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a good thing. It just makes it easy for people to invite their friends, and
right.
and their family members to come in and recognize, something away from a denomination. And the Lord's invitation, he's like that.
That's right.
He's inviting, everybody to come in, and
he's trying to make it easy.
Yeah. I think about, you're talking about, marriage, and Matthew 22 popped into my mind, about the marriage feast. And
okay. Said, I thought you were talking about the Sadducees.
No, he's like, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, and they were not willing to come. And, I think about, our invitation. I think that we as a church should always be thinking about, how do we do things? Why do we do things? And are the things we're doing working? Are we gaining more souls? We losing more souls? Is what?
And does it make sense to people?
Does it make sense? Are we prudent, or is this something that we did because the denominations did it, and we came out of the denominations? And I know. Let me rephrase that. The Lord's Church was established in Acts 2 and has always existed. But while there was, I believe, and can prove through a lot of things, that the church went underground when it started getting persecuted. The church, many of the church fathers, there was, the way that God designed things was for there not to be like a big hierarchy and right, for there to be a governmental based church. Well, when the Roman Catholic Church got in bed with, when the Roman government got in bed with the church, because the church grew so big, the government said, we want to be part of that. And, right. And so then they start getting involved, and man, then you got the Roman Catholic Church is formed, and that's the first great falling away of the true existence of the church. And then you have all these problems for all these years. Well, then you have this whole segue back into, restoring, reforming the church. And you, Chris, you're very versed with all that, a lot better than I am. But
well, you're doing a fine job of it.
But some of these guys came back in, and they had to come out of, they grew up in a denomination and said, this is not the way that the Lord's church should be. This is not what we read in our Bibles. And so you had a group all along that was staying in the church, and then you had this whole huge falling away, and then boom, these guys are coming back in, and then it's like, hey, this thing's been here the whole time. But it's pretty neat to see that you got kind of a few different ideology people on a couple of different continents that have the same way of thinking of salvation, because the Bible is, what it says. Well,
you think about this, and here's a good way to illustrate. I love that you said that. That just sparked something in my mind, because, you think about, for example, Pentecostalism or, charismatic churches, mm-hmm. the speaking in tongues thing or whatever. So, you think about these restoration principles that we would promote and push, right? This idea that let's not try to reform everything around us. Let's just restore what was there, right? Let's go back to the Bible and only use the Bible. And that's why we use the Bible so much in our assembly and the podcast and everything like that, is for that very reason. Because if you're a Christian, by definition, you're a conservative. You're conserving or preserving the Word of God, right?
Yeah, you're a 5%er. Like in today's society, there's a recent poll that if you view the lens of life, the way that you view life through the lens of a Bible, then you're a 5%er. There's 5% of people that view everything that they do through the lens of a Bible.
In America,
yeah.
And
there's people who are blaming. There's people who, of course, you kind of see, and I don't want to get in all the mess of division, but there's a lot of division that's still happening. And a lot of people are blaming Christianity for this election that happened.
Yeah. I mean, you think about this, and so you go to, come with me to Honduras, and you're going to see in Honduras, and I don't know how it is in Africa or whatever, but you hear the stories, but I know explicitly how it is in Honduras. What I mean by that is this: is that if you go to Honduras, the majority of your denominations in Honduras are Pentecostal churches. Aside from the Catholic Church, outside the Catholic Church has its influence, pretty much across the land.
Yeah.
But you have to understand what I'm trying to illustrate here is that, they had to come in and be taught what it meant to be a Catholic, and then they had to come in and be taught what it meant to be a Pentecostal, in the sense of how they assemble together, how their services go, all this stuff, the spirit, all this stuff has to be taught, because here's the difference. And this is your point that you made, Bob, without making it, in the sense that these guys that started these restoration, really pushing this restoration back to the forefront. Let's go back to this church. You used this line. I like that analogy. This line from, and the beginning of your line was the cross. You didn't say that, but that's what you meant, was that
and
from
Acts
Pentecost.
2,
Acts 2, whatever, however you want to, I mean, that's on a timeline view, you wouldn't even see the difference, but Acts 2 and the cross, is this timeline view that the church is there. Well, then you have this Catholic Church tangent that comes on. And then from that, you have all these, just filters down into all these different Reformation guys. Well,
40,000.
Yeah, 40-some thousand we have now. Well, what you were talking about is going back, scrapping this whole model down here, this timeline, and going back to this original timeline model. And so, or original, the seed, right? That Luke uses, the seed is the word of God. And, so you go to these, look at these guys that across the world, we have tons and tons of information. And I'm a history nerd, so I've actually read the books on this stuff that, that they have historical records of across the whole known world, that there are churches that have lived and perpetuated the purity of the doctrine of Christ since its inception. And that doesn't mean if it's none, right? Even let's just say that that doesn't still make it not valid, because there's no, there's no historical link. And what I mean by that is that Israel several times had to restore itself back to, in Josiah's day, you remember they find the book of the law, right? Yeah. Even our denominational friends and churches, they still, to some degree, granted, it is, I've listened to some of those preachers and stuff like that, and I will say that they do quote scripture at least, but it's rough. I'll just leave it at that. It's a challenge the way that they present it as truth.
And we gotta try. We're doing jail ministry, and we're coming back to 15 people. Now we got 7 people that are active in evangelism and jail ministry at our church. And so, just seeing those things are amazing. Well, one of our guys picked up a tract, and he sees this thing, and this denomination was just trying to bring people in, like literally. It was just talking about how sweet that the promises are of God, and it's like, just come to the honey, and it was, but there was no substance. Like, right. It was just,
there's no scriptural basis or anything like that. So it was an emotional plea.
Right, we're going over these things with these guys, and
we just bring them honey buns, Bob.
I know. Hey, honey buns will get them in the room, and maybe that was their goal, but like, it was just. There was no substance, but they were talking about, okay, here's salvation. And, they're giving like one verse, solo for salvation. And it's like, man, how is that? And, because when you read your Bible, there are multiple verses that tell you about different things. Man is saved by this.
Well, and so you go back to this idea of like, why we do the things we do for. And, certainly you can see the challenges looking backwards historically with, when the church got in bed with the government the first time. You have this huge breach that changed it for 1,000+ years, right? And or it still has changed. It's never going to go back. We've done plowed this, row now. And
so one reason why the forefathers of America said should be a separation of church and state. It wasn't so that the church couldn't impact the state. It was so that the state couldn't impact the church.
That's right. That's right. And even in those days, I mean, the Episcopal Church was I'm from Virginia. I don't know the other states, but or colony, the Virginia government paid money to the Episcopal Church back then. I mean, they literally, even in their mind, separation of church and state was such a new thing to them. They didn't even really know how to handle it well. You understand what I mean? Like they just knew that where they came from, the government and the church kind of existing on the same plane. I mean, maybe it's because, in Ephesians 1:22, it's Christ is the head of the church. And anytime you have two heads, you know what you have is conflict, right? Yeah. And you'll always err on the side of the one that you have the most immediate consequences with. So if Jesus says this, and I'm not dead, so I'm not really standing before him in judgment, but the Archbishop, Canterbury, the guy that's over the Episcopal Church says this, or you'll die, right? Jesus says this guy says this, there's an immediate, return, ROI on investment there, return on investment with listening to this guy. And so, that's where your challenges come from. And so, ultimately, like we're talking about, you used the illustration of extending the invitation. I mean, it's common for most congregations, I suppose, in the church to, at the end of their sermon, lesson, chat, whatever you want to call it, to sing a song and have an invitation. And, I even think we have to be careful with some of those things because, Matthew 11, when Jesus, he's kind of got this is the open invitation, right? And
come to me.
Yeah, Matthew 11:27. All things have been delivered to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except for the Father, nor does anyone know the Father except the Son, and the one whom the Son wills reveals to him. So Jesus is saying, like, listen, I know everything that the Father wants us for you to know. So then, verse 28, he says, listen, all you that labor, come to me. If you're heavy laden, I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Now think about what he does. In verse 27, he ties it. The one whom the Son wills to reveal to him. The reveal is this pouring out of understanding, this knowledge, this same idea that's in Hebrews 8 through 13, or Jeremiah 31 through 33, where Jesus is saying, Jeremiah is saying, behold, the days will come when I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers when I took them by the hand and led them out of Israel, for they continued not in my covenant. For this new covenant, all will know me from the least to the greatest, and their sins and iniquities I'll remember no more. He's showing the illustration of how this new covenant will happen, that this new covenant will be people that understand, you're born no more will a man say, know the Lord. And that, I don't know, about verse 11 or be about verse 32 of Jeremiah 31. But, this idea that Judaism, you're born a Jew and you have to understand that from birth, it's your parents' responsibility to teach you what that meant to be a Jew. Well, under this new covenant, I learned what it means to be a Christian. And then I accept the terms of surrender. You must be born again. You got to be born of the water and the Spirit. This thing inside of you. How is your spirit born again? Well, it's born again. 1 Peter 3:21, it says, there's an antitype which also now saves us, not the putting away the filth of the flesh. Baptism, right? He says there's an antitype which now saves us, baptism, not the putting away the filth of the flesh, but an answer of a good conscience towards God.
Through the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
That's right. He's connecting the two. I understand this, that I understand this now. What do I understand? That there's a resurrection, right? Mm-hmm. So these things are building blocks. And because of that, then I can be born again. Then it goes back to this.
Be resurrected.
I can die and be resurrected. Come to me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you'll find rest in your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's the invitation that the Lord extends. He doesn't say, the invitation should be, come my yoke is easy and my burden is light, and I'll see you Sunday morning at about 10:45-ish. No, that's not what he says.
And I just want to. So here's what I would like to propose to all the people that are listening to this podcast is that, and potentially, this might be a reason why you'd want to share it. Is how many people have you had respond to the invitation, and how many souls in your church have been saved in proportion in the last, let's just say, 12 months, 18 months, 10 years, whatever. Yeah. How many? And in 10 years might be hard for somebody to think back on, because let's just say we can't think back 10 days. But but looking back over the last year, how many souls has your church reached? And then how many people truly respond to the invitation? I mean, there was a person who was crying about half of my sermon yesterday, and they never came forward at the invitation. But I mean, they're just bawling and squalling. Guess what I did? I reached to them, hugged them, went to them in the moment. And this person was more of a visitor, so it was kind of a, right. And man, this person contemplating some really struggles in life. And I'm talking about whether or not they're going to live or die. And
and those are those challenges, Bob. I mean, like, you think about this, this idea of this, like, so I'm just trying to think for me in the last 12 months. And I mean, they pick on me because I use the pond so much here, instead of using the baptistry. But I have used the baptistry, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 12 months. But I know in the last couple months, I know in the last 2 months, I've used my pond a half a dozen times. Yeah. And the reason why I use my pond is because we're at my kitchen table, right? And I don't even ask them. You know what I mean? Like I was studying with Jim and Teresa Card. There's some friends of Brooke and Andrews. Mm-hmm. They came to our fish fry, and we kind of hooked up with them, anyway. So, he's an electrician, and Liam had just kind of fell right in with him, loving on him. And they're just a really awesome family, just a really great guys. Well, Brooke and Andrew were real tight with them. And so they've been coming with Brooke and Andrew. So we invite Brooke and Andrew and them, a couple months into it, because we're kind of, one of the challenges we got right now is just study tight. How do you spread it around? And so we just keep
up a church building at your place just to be able to study,
Well, so we started studying with them, and Jim and Teresa, they're in their, Jim is probably 10 years older than me, so he's maybe not quite 10, but he's very early 50s. And so anyways, we're sitting there studying at the table, and just having the same conversation that you've had 1,000 times. And Jim's going through this thing in his head, like, well, wait a minute now, like, I was baptized in Ohio, but I was saved when I was 9, and and he's talking to the wall. He's not talking to me anymore. Right, you know what I mean? And
he's talking to Jim, and he's reasoning. He's reasoning with. I mean, it's going.
And I told him, because he said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Jim, I think you quit talking to me 2 or 3 minutes ago." Mm-hmm. And I just sit there quiet. I don't say anything. And then it was like, "Well, we need to go in here to the pond." And his wife Teresa said, "He said it right when he said we." And so so we went down there and baptized him. Well, you think about this. That was before we started our first study. Then before we started our first study with them, the invitation was still open. From the time we had our first study, the invitation was open. And what you got to realize, what we have to realize is that, we just need to make we're way makers, right? We're the ones that are making this like pathway, or this avenue to salvation. And I was studying with a couple Monday, and I probably ought not tell the story right now. We'll tell this story in a couple months. It'll be a good story to tell in a couple months.
Well, and I want to give some people some realistic things. All right, we had 15. We were roughly coming back to 15 people at Capitol Hill when we left KW, and everybody knew what it was going to be. All right, we've had 14 baptisms in 15 months, Amen. And so, but none of them zero responded to the invitation at the end of a sermon and said, "I'm ready to be baptized." Zero.
Right.
What happens is it's all after the fact. It's all on Tuesdays. I mean, baptized 2 guys that are on, flag football team. Of course, I've been in a relationship with these boys forever. There's a boy who's
so they're not real tough. What you're saying?
Yeah, they're not real tough. So, but we're talking about kids. And anyways,
well, we didn't. I never played flag football. Never.
Obviously, right? So, so there's we got these but it was at the end of our football game, and it's like, Mr. Bob, I've been really thinking about this, and we'd already had studies, but it's that moment that it hits. It's like, well, sorry, son, we reserved this for Sunday mornings, at 10 a.m.
Right.
Right. Well, no, and then it's different studies that are happening at different times, and it just leads to another baptism. And the point is, I think that we've had, it's very few, maybe 2 or 3 people in all these months have come forward to publicly repent, as far as at the end of a sermon. But there's been a lot of people who have said, listen, I've made a lot of big changes in my life, and I've repented of a lot of things, and I want the church to know and understand. And we announce those things on the front end.
That's right.
Front end of the church.
That's right.
And what I love too is there'll be somebody at KW. We'd be having a study with somebody during the middle of Sunday school, and it's like they're ready right then. Yeah. So we'd open up the church service with a baptism.
Yeah. Last Wednesday night, it was Ben and them. I've been studying with the college kid, and from up in Jackson. And did you baptize him or Taylor baptized him?
Taylor baptized him.
Taylor baptized him last week or week. I don't know. I can't keep you straight in my head. And so anyways, they baptized him, and his daddy's a preacher in one of the Baptist churches up there, and so this kid, he's a Hispanic kid too, Cuban actually, and so Wednesday night, you think about this, Wednesday night during our normal Bible class time, we had to find a place, and this is what's cool. We had to go find a place that was empty that we could study with, that because I was studying with him before. I don't know why he was here early, but he was here early. Well, they had a little birthday party, and I reckon he just thought okay, we're having food. So he just comes in and he's eating pizza and cake and all that stuff with Kendall, Kendra's boy, so it's 10-year-olds, and he just kind of sits down and starts eating. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to sit down with you. So we started a Bible study right there. And he said, I'm having a hard time explaining to my dad, how come we don't have here, quote unquote, a pastor, a pastor, And I said, well, that's an interesting question. Why are you struggling with that for? And he said, well, it's just, he's skeptical because of that. I said, can I grab somebody and we have this discussion together? He said, yeah. So I actually grabbed Chip, and I pulled Chip in there with me.
Here's a pastor, bud.
Well, that's what and really to them, the word shepherd and pastor, there's only one word. They don't have 2 words for that. So pastor and shepherd are the same word. They wouldn't use it differently. So in their Bible, there is the word shepherd or pastor. There's only one word. And so but I thought, what an awesome thing that we're sitting in here.
Shepherd of the church.
Yeah, we're introducing him to a shepherd, and he's been able to explain this from a shepherd's perspective. And this is because he's responded to the invitation. Right? That's why he did it on a Monday night or something like that. And the other guys, Colby and John Nixon.
Party.
Yeah.
Colby birthday party's scriptural. Yeah. That's what you have to ask.
Wedding feast are.
Here's what the church has to ask is our invitation, is it conducive to allowing people to bring their brokenness and to bring their questions and to bring their heart to Jesus? Well, on a small percentage, yes. But here's the thing. Man, it is super intimidating.
It is.
People are more apt to confess their problems on social media to the social media church.
Gazillions.
I'll use air quotes to the social media group of people and to the world than they are in our church buildings. And that's a problem. And we have to say, okay, well, and here's the next thing is the preachers that are preaching the gospel. And I'm not talking about all the denominations or whatever, but gospel preachers are hinging whether or not somebody walks down in front of 100, 200, 300 people in an intimidating environment. They're walking down and they're the only person who's sitting on that pew. And so preachers are hinging whether or not their sermon was effective or not, based on how many people walked down and sat down on a pew in front of 200 people or 100 people or 60 people.
Or 3,000 or 4,000 at polishing the pulpit. And I've seen people do it, and I think like, son, like you got a 3-minute walk, just to get up there,
And so you're hinging, your preacher's personal mindset. You and I don't put our identity in whether or not, if I put my identity and if we put our church's identity in how effective the gospel is based on how many people responded to the invitation at the end of a church service, which the denominations call an altar call. They'll come and be like, y'all, is it okay for me to come forward during the altar call? I'm like, well, wait a minute. We don't do altar calls. Altars are in the Old Testament, but but I get it. But we're hinging. If I hinged my church's healthiness based on who came forward at the end during one song at one particular time, then we would view our church as not growing and not effective.
Amen. Listen, I love this discussion, but I have got to get off here. Can we pick this up next week? Because I got a lot of, I think this can lead into a lot of good, healthy conversations that we can have about why we do the things we do for. So we'll call this why we do the things.
I just got fired up, man. I'm like,
why we do the things we do, part 1. We'll see you guys next week.